Well, everybody, welcome to the 2019 History Fair presentation. As you can see, this is an impromptu during a teacher workday since I dressed up a great amount for this. But I'm going to try to get through this thing so that if anybody has any questions, that their students aren't clear on what to do or what History Fair is all about, I wanted to have something out there so that you can look at it on YouTube or Schoology, wherever we find it. So anyhow, this year's theme is Triumph and Tragedy. First off, History Day is a national program that is that we participate in every year. It's going to be mandatory for kids 7th through 11th grades. 12th graders can do it voluntarily, and I think we are going to have a few this year that are going to do it since they went to nationals last year as juniors and they're hungry for more. And the theme comes out every year from the national people, and that the competition is on a bunch of different levels. So we have our History Fair. It's going to be on February 14th and 15th this year, and class presentations will be a week and a half before that. And then we have our fair down in Kid Life, where everybody gets to see all the fruits of the labor, and it's really kind of a neat thing down there. And from there we move on to the county fair, which is the top two of every category move on to the county fair, which is in Tavares this year, and it's going to be the first weekend in March, I believe. We got the dates at the end of this. And then from there it's the states, which is early May, and nationals in June, God willing. So that's the scope of the thing, and so let's just get into it and you can we'll talk about it. All right, so what is the fair? It's a program that allows students to conduct research on a world, national, state, or local topic. This year's theme is Triumph and Tragedy. And the catchphrase for NHD is, it's not just a day, it's an experience. And it really is. If you really pour into this thing, you get an awful lot out of it. You learn so much about neat stuff about history and things that you may not have known about before. And the canvas is wide open as to what you can do. You don't if you're taking American history, you don't have to do an American history topic, although it'll be easier for you. But you can do anything that really catches your interest. We'll get into that in a minute. So students can choose any topic they wish, so long as it relates to the theme. And the one catch on that is, do not choose a topic from the last 25 years, and that there's not enough historical context for that. So yes, that means 9/11 is still out of bounds on what we're doing here, which because honestly, we still don't have a whole lot of context about what 9/11 was all about and how it's going to affect the world. We're getting there, but we're not there yet. So any theme at all, any topic at all, as long as it relates to the theme. You want to do something about George Washington, you can do that. It relates to the theme, how it relates to Triumph and Tragedy. You want to do Napoleon, you want to do you're interested in the creation of Mount Rushmore, or you're into architecture, ancient Greece. Anything at all is wide open as long as you can kind of fit it into the topic of Triumph and Tragedy. That's how the judging is going to go there. And there's a couple other things that we'll talk about as we go on too, what makes a good topic and a bad topic. So make sure it's not in the past 25 years, which at this point now brings us to 1995, 96. So anything before that, fair game. So Triumph and Tragedy, this is stuff I stole from the NHD website. And by the way, nhd.org, you go there, it's got everything you're ever going to need. However, it is very dense. So prepare to spend some time down the rabbit hole if you go to nhd.org. There's some stuff that's real kind of easy to find, and stuff that's a little bit deeper to find, but any question you have is going to be answered there if you can find it. It's not if you can find it, when you find it. It's just that there's an awful lot of information there. So about Triumph and Tragedy, what is Triumph and what is Tragedy? You need to kind of get your mind around what that actually entails. Can one person's triumph be another's tragedy? Hello, American Indians. Can a person or group suffer both tragedy and triumph from the same event? How does one ultimately triumph after tragedy? And can triumph lead to tragedy, or vice versa? Can tragedy lead to triumph? Those are the things that are going to be what this topic is all about. And as an aside here, what I've seen from past years of History Fair, The topic of triumph and tragedy, there are two things you kind of need to do there. It does not need to be 50-50. You don't have to have both parts, triumph and tragedy. They both have to be in there, but it can be 75% this triumph led to 25% this tragedy, or vice versa. You know, it doesn't have to be a 50-50. Yes, question?
Are each one of those bullets points that need to be covered in the presentation?
These are just thinking topics. They don't have to go into, they do have to have a triumph in there somewhere, they do have to have a tragedy in there somewhere. But it doesn't have to be evenly distributed, and likewise it doesn't, you know, but they do need to have both aspects there. And this video, Triumph and Tragedy in History, the National History Top 2019, this is on YouTube under the NHD part on YouTube. Also, if you go to nhd.org, it'll link you to this YouTube video. It's an hour and 10 minutes long if you want to have fun watching that, but it does get into deep into what the topic is all about, and it also tells you a lot about like resources you can use to look at stuff as well. So, categories. There are 4 categories that you can compete in, either as an individual or a group. It's the same 4 categories: an exhibit, a performance, a documentary, or a website. And for the group, it's the same thing. However, for a group can range from 2 to 3 students. That here at Real Life Christian Academy, we do not allow, except under extremely extenuating circumstances, more than 3 people per group. If you say, okay, we 3 are going to be a group and it's going to be great, and you do this part, and you do this part, and you do this part, and then somebody leaves you hanging out to dry, and you come in with 2/3 of a project, we are going to grade you on 2/3 of a project. We don't, you know, we are not in any kind of a position to say that, oh, it was Johnny who didn't do his work, but these 2 did, so Johnny's going to get a 0 and these 2 are going to get 100. You know, just simple math here. If you turn in 2/3 of a project, that's a 66, and all 3 of you are getting the 66. Be careful who you team up with. We have no way of policing sandbaggers. So if you are not sure your friend is going to be there for you, you might want to go the individual route. All right, there's 2 things that every project has to have. Doesn't matter if you're an exhibit or a website or a performance or anything. The first is the annotated bibliography. It lets your reader know what sources you used and the creation of your project. Lets you know how many sources you used, the quality and ranges of sources. All right, so it has to be an MLA Turabian style, and this is where Ms. Martins is sitting in to help us out with this one. All right, so you need to have a bibliography, and it needs to be annotated. Now, most of you have run into a bibliography at some point in your life already, in which you have to say, these are the sources I use to get my information from. Plagiarism is a big deal. Don't do it. If you plagiarize your project, you'll hit the plagiarism rules that all our classes have, which is big fat 0 usually. So cite your sources and know what sources you're using, and tell us what sources you used. Great example of one. Ron Chernow's book, The Hamilton, is what the play was based off and all that sort of thing. Obviously, you're going to put Ron Chernow, Hamilton, biography, Simon & Schuster Press, whatever. This was the main source of my information on Alexander Hamilton. It covered his entire life. It was very in-depth. It had a great bibliography that I used to find other sources from. That's the type of thing you want to put in your annotated bibliography. Pictures also need to go in your bibliography. You can say, this picture showed Alexander Hamilton. Well, you won't get a picture of Hamilton, but this picture of a painting shows Alexander Hamilton when he was in his mid-30s, and so forth and so on. So the annotated part tells us about what you use that source for. And even if you're just saying, I use this for background information, your history book, you know, the book we make you take in class, you go to the library beginning of the school year every year, that's a source. Use it. Now, the other question I get all the time with this is, how many sources do you need to have? The History Fair projects we saw in Washington, D.C. had somewhere between 100 and 200 sources most of the time. And yes, I know most of you are not going to do that. The requirements in my class that I put down are you have to have 5 sources at least, and they have to have more than one type. You cannot have 5 websites. You have to have a book, you have to have a magazine article, and you can have a website, that's fine. But you have to have a variety of sources, and there has to be at least 5. The downside of that, though, is any project that has only 5 sources is not going to win anything. That you can have the greatest exhibit you've ever seen in the world, and if I look at the bibliography and you've got 5 sources, then hey, congratulations, you got a a B+ on this thing, but don't think about county or state or anything like that with 5 sources. The research is what makes the project the project. Next is the process paper. And Mr. Norton will appreciate the triumph and tragedy I put here of the 1986 World Series. Anyhow, this is also a requirement. It is a maximum of 500 words explaining how you conducted your research and created and developed your entry. So, the process paper has 4 parts. And remember, you have 500 words maximum to use this. A rule of thumb about history fair: if they say you have a maximum of this, you want to get close to that, you want to hit that maximum. If you have 500 words to use in your process paper, you should be at 490 at least. A process paper with 100 words is not really telling anybody anything. Same goes for sizes of things and stuff like that. Anyhow, 4 parts should explain how you chose your topic, how you conducted your research. I went to the library, I used Google, whatever. How you selected your presentation category and created your project. We decided to go with a tri-board because I had some of them left over from science fair, and Julie's really creative and made little sparkles over everything. That's how we did that. That's all fine, but here it is. The last part is the important part. Explain how your project relates to the annual theme. This is the main component. I always say that if you have 500 words to use on your process paper, use 100 words for the first 3 topics, and then use the remaining 400 words for the final thing. This is where you're telling the judges or your teacher how your project works, why it's triumph and tragedy, why it's a good project, why it's something we should pay attention to. That is the key to the whole thing. So as far as, well, I chose Alexander Hamilton because I love the play. We decided to do a performance because we like to sing, and we researched by watching the Hamilton play over and over and over and over again and finding the book in the library. That's that part. But then, how does Alexander Hamilton refer triumph and tragedy? What parts of his life were triumphant? What parts of his life were tragic? All right, on to the actual categories. The first is an exhibit. Here we have one of our actual exhibits up here. All right, the exhibit is the visual representation of your research and interpretation of your topic's impact and change in history. The key thing to think about the exhibit is it's basically a tri-board, and make it like a museum exhibit. That's what you're into here. This is something that you would walk into a museum and see and say, well, yeah, that's interesting. It should have visuals with labels, captions. It has different components to it, like there. Size requirements. And this is one that the girls here went to States with on this one. Here's a diagram of the topics there. You can use media within your exhibit. That you can have an iPad sitting in there that is going to play a video while people are watching or looking at your exhibit. That's fine too. You can have music. There's the criteria for that. The word limit is 500 word limit to all text. However, the 500 word limit is your words. If you have a quote up there, that does not count to the word limit. If you have a magazine article up there that talks about prisoner 4854 in the Warsaw, in Auschwitz. If you have a magazine article up there, you just kind of cut it out of the magazine and plopped it up there. That does not count toward the word limit. The word limit is the stuff that you put up there: titles, subtitles, captions, graphs, something that you wrote. So that's the whole thing about the word limit there. Now, for an exhibit, one thing that we've learned over the years is that your exhibit even though you are going to be presenting it in class to the judges, that sort of thing, an exhibit needs to stand on its own. That that a lot of times, especially at the real life history fair, the judges are going to be walking through the room and they're going to look at your thing and your exhibit, and that your exhibit is what's going to need to kind of tell its own story without you there. If you make it to states or counties, states, or nationals, then in the you will present your stuff to the judges, but afterwards, when they're going through the final judgment, it has to stand on its own. And the judges are not going to talk to you about that. Question?
On the word limit, is that per caption or is that total for the entire exhibit?
Total for the board. The 500, the word limit is, the 500 word limit is for your entire topic there. Two other things I thought about that. One is your process paper and your bibliography need to be with your board, but they should not be on your board. Now you can get what I've seen people do is make put a folder on the back and then put them on the back part there, so the judges can have access to them that way. But for instance, if you make it to county, you're going to set up your tri-board there, and your process paper and your bibliography will be in front of the exhibit. And when we do our one here down in Kid Life, we're going to need to have your process papers and bibliographies with you. One other thing about an exhibit, so you have to be able to put your subject into a thesis that is going to drive your entire research, so it's a good thing to have. Again, not a requirement, but it's kind of expected. And we think that one of our exhibits last year, which was fantastic, might have run afoul of the thesis statement thing. That again, not a requirement, but the judges were kind of looking for it, didn't see it there, and maybe lost a point or two because of that. And it was the difference between winning at states and moving on to nationals. So, all right, next is performance, where real life has an amazing history already, and that these girls went to nationals last year with their performance of Rose Schneiderman. Again, individual or group. It's a dramatic portrayal of your topic's significance in history and must be original in production. And here they are, actually performing at nationals. Now, as far as the performance goes, it must not exceed 10 minutes in length, but again, use all 10 minutes. A performance that's only 4 minutes long isn't going to go anywhere. Timing starts immediately after the announcement of the title, and you'll be allowed things that you can do with a performance. You can have slides, tape recorders, tape recorders, not funny, computers, but the point is that the people in the performance have to have the entire, have to man everything. Let me go back a slide here because I wanted to show this. So the performance the girls did last year, these three were the main performers, and Faith was brought in to kind of man the, they were doing a musical thing, they did songs, a rap, a spoken word stuff, and she was running the media, she was running the computer to, to do the songs and that sort of thing, and so they didn't have to worry about that while they were performing. Now, she also sang all the songs with them and did the raps with them as they developed it there, but the idea was that she was the one kind of controlling all that stuff. Costumes may be purchased or created. The girls created their own costumes and were historically accurate with their costumes. You can buy them if you have all the money in the world. You can make them if you want. Whatever. All right, documentary. Here is, they finished, Alana and Jordan finished in the top 10 in Florida at the state fair last year with this one, the Battle of Yorktown, Treaty of Paris. Basically, a documentary is, to think about it, as a YouTube video. So it reflects your ability to use audiovisual equipment and communicate your topic's significance. The presentation should use primary materials, but also be original in production. So yeah, YouTube video. Again, 10-minute time limit, use it all. You have 5 minutes to set up, 5 minutes to clean up. When the first audio visual is seen is when time starts. And the big thing with this, and this is from the state, is parents cannot help the student with technical issues. because what they've run into is a lot of times mommy and daddy will do the video, will film the kids doing their thing and doing that. The kids will show up at the fair and have no idea how to run any of the equipment. It has to be students doing the equipment. They have to do the sound, they have to do the actual recording. But then again, everybody's got iPhones now, so everybody should be really good at that. Students run all equipment. All entries must be student produced, including narration, voiceovers, the dramatization. You can use interviews for participants in historical events. Say you're doing, Ronald Reagan's assassination attempt or something, the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan, that you could interview grandparents or parents who actually remember, oh yeah, I remember I was watching TV and Days of Our Lives was on and they broke in knowing that this guy shot Reagan. You can interview people, and by the way, interviews are a fantastic source. If you're doing something of recent time, of the recent time frame, and you know people that were actually there, that is the gold standard of sources, and more on that when you get a little more competitive. Be careful about copyright rules with videos. Make sure you're not just like, you're not doing Pocahontas and then just pulling 5 minutes of the Disney movie to throw in there or something like that. Yeah, that's not cool. All right, you must provide the judges with a DVD. You might put your YouTube video on a DVD to leave it with them so that if you make it to finals, they can view it without you there. Website. You must use the NHD Weebly site, nhd.weebly.org. That is the only websites that are acceptable at county, at state, at nationals. And now there is a Weebly.org by itself that and we've run into problems this year. It's kind of easy to transfer them over, so I'm not making that big a deal about it, but make sure you just, already, you go through the NHD site and nhd.weebly.org and they'll set you all up with it. There can be no more than 1,200 visible student-composed words. Again, this trick there is that it has to be something that you wrote to count toward the 1,200. If it's a quote from somebody, then that doesn't count toward the word limit. The entire site, including multimedia, must use up only 100 megabytes of file space. I think that's still true. Note, it's purportedly the easiest way to create a project. Everybody's kind of familiar with the triboard, but from people that have done things in the past, website has been something that a lot of people say this is the easiest thing you can do. If you don't really want to, if you're not really not sure what you want to do and you're tired of doing the triboard, hop on to Weebly and have a go with it. Rumor has it it's the easiest thing to do. Let's see, here's the navigation, all pages intercorrected, hypertext, homepage, all that stuff. You can use clips, total running time. If you need a plugin, you must provide the site with a, Adobe or something like that. How to do this? You go to nhd.org, scroll down until you see that, click on there, create a username and password, begin constructing your site. Every time you save it, it'll allow you to go back, so you don't have to do the entire website in one sitting, which means don't do it the night before. All right, production. All entries must be original productions. You can use professional photos, graphics, video, pre-recorded music, but make sure you give proper credit to everything. Copyright rules must be followed, and plagiarism will get you busted. More info. For more detailed information, go to nhd.org is again the treasure trove of everything. For Florida, floridahistoryday.com. You can just do floridahistory.com, it'll get you there. The thing I will recommend about the Florida site is that there's a bunch of awards that are specific just to the state history fair. So if you make it to states, or if you are thinking you're going to make it to states, you might want to poke around there and see like what awards they give awards for sports topic. They give one to local Florida stuff. The Mayflower Award. By the way, local topics are fantastic because you get a lot of primary sources you can get on that. You can interview people that have been there. Locals are pretty cool. Important history fair dates. For the real life history fair, we're going to be November 14th and 15th. Lake County is March 2nd. The Florida History Day is May 5th and 7th in Tallahassee. And again, God willing, let's go to DC again with June 9th through 13th at the University of Maryland. And as far as in-class dates, January 9th is teams and topics are due. You need to tell me who's on your team at least, and topic would be a really good thing to do, but you really should have one by then. On January 21st, you have to have a preliminary process paper. It doesn't have to be the finished product, but it has to have something to show me that what you're doing there. It's going to count as a quiz grade. Again, it shows that you're working on this, and you've got some kind of idea of what you're going and where you're doing in this. And again, the main part is how it relates to the theme. So even if you're not sure about where you found your research or how you're going to create your project, you should have some kind of idea about how it relates to the theme by then. Preliminary bibliography is due on January 28th. Again, you're going to have sources by then. Also a quiz grade. And then beginning February 4th, projects are due. They will be presented in class. I usually do mine at a random. I pull names out of a hat and say, okay, team number 3, you're up, go. You know, you do the projects in class, and then from there, it'll be the history fair program itself. So thank you for your continued interest and support of Real Life History Fair. Best of luck at the school fair, and hope to see you in March at the county fair. One last thing I'll throw out there, again, this is kind of thing there, but as far as choosing a topic goes, if you can get a little bit of an offbeat topic, that tends to go better. Choose something a little bit off the beaten path. Again, local stuff is really great for that. And because those are the things that make especially as you get competitive, the judges stood up and take notice of that. We've seen George Washington a million times. We've seen Jackie Robinson a million times. We've seen Rosa Parks a million times. So with that, if you have any questions, I'm Mr. Janine. I'm in my room. Come and ask me a question anytime at all. I'm more than happy to talk to you about it. And you can reach me at mdeneen@getreallife.com. For any parents who have a question, drop me an email. I'll be happy to help you out with that. And we'll see you in February.